In his novel In the Lake of the Woods, Tim Obrien places his main character, John Wade, into Charlie Company during the Vietnam War. Charlie Company arrived in South Vietnam in late December 1967. By early March, they had already suffered 28 casualties due to mines and booby traps, and they had suffered 40 by the end of that month. Like all American forces, they were thrown off, hurt, and angry by the Vietnamese guerrilla warfare fighting style. This anger eventually led to the event they will always be remembered and defined by. Perhaps the most horrific act American soldiers have ever committed in war. The My Lai massacre left over 400 innocent men, women, and children, Vietnamese civilians, dead. Does Tim Obrien accurately portray Charlie Company in his novel? In his novel, Tim Obrien accurately incorporated William Calley, lieutenant of Charlie Company, who was convicted by court-martial of murdering 22 unarmed South Vietnamese civilians in the My Lai massacre in 1968 during the Vietnam War. In the text, Obrien used Calley to demonstrate the leadership that influenced the My Lai massacre, which further explains and shows his main character's involvement. On page 141, Tim Obrien incorporates a court-martial testimony from Calley where he states, "I didn't discriminate between individuals in the village, sir. They were all the enemy. They are all to be destroyed, sir." This quote accurately shows Calley's leadership in the massacre and proves that Obrien wanted to use him in his novel to show Charlie Company's leader's influence on the massacre. Another aspect that Obrien accurately portrayed are the maneuvers of the company prior to the massacre and post-massacre. On page 105, it states, "At 7:30, the choppers banked in a long arc and approached the hamlet of Tuan Yin from the southwest." This is a very accurate description of Charlie Company's approach to Tuan Yin. Obrien kept Charlie Company's timetable, battle maneuvers, death totals, and their actions in the My Lai massacre accurate to real historical events because he wanted it to make the novel as historical as possible, causing the readers to think what happened was real. The main thing that Tim Obrien changes in Charlie Company is adding John Wade to it. He adds John Wade into Charlie Company to create the idea of sorcerer that all Charlie Company believes in, to make it seem like John really was sorcerer and that he was magical and could manipulate people. This will come into play later in the story and help readers believe that John would manipulate Kathy and could possibly have even killed her. Really though, Charlie Company was just made up of normal soldiers who were angry and committed awful crimes. On page 38, it shows how they thought of sorcerer by saying, they'd ask his advice on matters of fortune, they'd tell each other stories about his incredible good luck, how he never got a scratch. Along with this, besides Calley, John changes the names of the soldiers in Charlie Company for their protection and to make sure that this story is not strictly historical. In conclusion, Tim Obrien chose to accurately display almost all the true facts behind Charlie Company, but he did choose to add in a new character and change the names because it would help later on in his story and would help create suspense that would make readers think that Kathy could have possibly been killed by her very own John.